A window to Spanking S1. My parents were genuine Victorians. This means they believed that children were to be mostly seen and not heard. I don't mean that there was any cruelty involved, just that you knew, as the child, you had certain limits. If those were breached, you were in a lot of trouble. That trouble usually meant you were sent to your room after you had suffered the right of being spanked. The form and duration of these punishments were decided by the gravity of the offense committed. Most of the time spankings from my mother were not too hard to take. However, you knew by your stinging rear that you had better mend your ways. When grave offenses were committed, you might have to wait for Dad to come home. If the problem was really awful, both parents took a turn at dispensing discipline. That only happened once to me, but it was memorable. The spankings were not often. However, they did occur when breaches of expected behavior took place or if the family name was put at risk by the deed committed. The story I'm about to tell has to do with this type of mistake. It was in the 1950s when these youthful sins took place. It was 7th grade and during a time of life when girls were a deep mystery to us boys. We were intensely interested in how they looked, smelled, and the changes in their bodies. There were no media as we know it today and television was just starting. You took advantage of every opportunity to get a little education or see some sights not before experienced. But, I'm getting ahead of myself. Suffice it to say certain types of education were a very exciting thing for us and we took our chances not thinking of the possible consequences. A few friends and I always walked home from school together. We comprised at least 3 girls and 3, sometimes 4 boys in this neighborhood group. We lived close to each other, house across the alley. We knew enough about each other's families to know what to expect if the standards of behavior were not adhered to. We understood that bad grades, mischief in the neighborhood, or worse, trouble at school would bring certain punishment at home. A call from a teacher, or worse the principal, was a cause for great concern. 2 of the girls in this group went to the parochial school and we met them each day on the way home. One girl who I'll call Jennifer was very well developed and liked to flirt with the boys in our group. One day she seemed preoccupied about something. We asked her what was wrong and coaxed out of her that she had gotten in trouble in school and had talked back to a nun. With a very downtrodden look she admitted that she'd made a very smart-mouthed comment to one of the strictest nuns in the school. She'd been taken to the principal's office where she was bent over the desk and given 5 swats with a yardstick on her thighs. Jennifer even raised her skirt to show us the red marks still very visible. Jennifer lifted her pleated tartan skirt just high enough for us to all see the still pinkish marks on her upper thighs. Wow! My first almost look at such a thing. Despite trying to be brave, Jennifer admitted she feared going home. She knew the principal had promised to call her mother regarding her disrespectful outburst. Jennifer's mother was one of those stern disciplinarians who you just did not trifle with. She had 3 daughters and they would all be good or she would know the reason why, a quote from Jennifer about her mother. Her mother treated us all very well, giving us cookies, hot chocolate, fruit, and so on. However, this was always on the promise that we would behave ourselves. I recall quite clearly how we tried to give Jennifer some comfort and sympathy, telling her we had all been grounded or sent to our rooms without supper. After all, when it's over, it is over. Right? But the knowledge of what would really occur hung in the air like a dark cloud. We all thought we were too old to be turned over the knee and spanked. Then Jennifer said it out loud, "Yes, Mother still spanks me and my 2 younger sisters." She said she could take it. That was if the punishment was not one of those rare times when her mother was really angry and would use a hairbrush or a strap on her over the couch. She was afraid her mother would be very angry by the time she got home. As it turned, Jennifer was right and her worst fears were well-founded. My friend James and I decided that if Jennifer was to be spanked, we wanted to witness the spectacle if it was at all possible. Of course, we did consider her our friend. However, curiosity would always get the better of us. We decided to observe from under the back porch where we could look through a small window. There we would be able to see what went on in the basement ironing room in Jennifer's house. When Jennifer went into the house, we went around the back of her house and took up our position by the window. Success was ours. Jennifer's mother had already taken her to the ironing room and closed the curtains. However, we still had a clear view over the top of the curtains. We heard the scolding and the offered apologies. I recall her mother's words. "You're about to get the worst spanking of your life, young lady." The scolding continued as Mrs. J prepared for the punishment by putting a sturdy wooden chair in the center of the room. She instructed Jennifer to retrieve both a hairbrush and the strap from the nearby cabinet. Mrs. J pulled Jennifer to her side and then over her lap. Jennifer's mother began the spanking with her hand. This all looked convincing enough to us. Jennifer squirmed, cried, and pleaded over her mother's lap. Her mother's hand came down hard and fast, first on one cheek then the other. There were 5 or 6 smacks on each side of the bottom as the punishment continued. After several minutes of hard hand spanking, Mrs. J told Jennifer to stand up. We thought the spanking was over but were wrong. What we heard next really turned us on and we both held our breaths. Mrs. J instructed her daughter to hand her the hairbrush. It was a black-backed wooden brush that looked fearsome to us, even from our window perch. Jennifer got the brush and handed it to her mother. There were tears still in her eyes from what she had already received. Jennifer was pulled back over her mother's knee. This was just like what happened to us boys at those times we badly misbehaved. The scolding continued in earnest. "How dare you humiliate me and this family with your smart mouth? I'll show you what happens to my daughter when she disgraces our family at school in front of the nuns." All the time she scolded, Mrs. J spanked and spanked with that hairbrush. Our friend Jennifer was pleading and crying and wiggling across her mother's lap. I clearly recall the sound. Smack. 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 Going on and on as the spanking continued. The punishment went on for some time. I began to feel very sorry and concerned for Jennifer as she endured this spanking. I remember saying to James that we had seen enough and should leave before we got caught. However, there was another feeling that said stay. This was all a great show even if it is risky. Of course, this side won out as we stayed on to witness even more of the punishment. James said Mrs. J had not used the strap and she still seemed very upset with her daughter. The vision of Jennifer getting punished with the strap kept me right where I was. This was despite my momentary chivalry in feeling we had seen enough. It seemed that Jennifer's mother would never stop scolding and spanking. Just then Mrs. J stopped the hairbrush spanking. "Jennifer, you're not done yet," came her command. "Get that strap. Hand it to me. Bend over. And grasp the seat of this chair," she ordered Jennifer. Jennifer trembled as she did what her mother said. Her mother began to scold again and we watched intently. Smack. 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 Jennifer received sharp smacks with the strap as we looked on.